What if Iran already has a nuclear weapon? What if the next missile it fires isn't just a warning shot, but a game changer? This week, as ballistic missiles fly and ceasefire rumors swirl, all eyes are on Donald Trump. The president left the G7 summit early. He's posting bold messages on Truth Social, and he's walking a dangerous line, calling for diplomacy while backing Israel's military campaign. So what does Trump really want? And more importantly, what will he do next? Israel says it can't take out Iran's underground nuclear sites without American firepower. But the window to act may be closing. Meanwhile, the threat of regional war is growing, and some are openly questioning whether regime change in Tehran is finally within reach. I'm Maayan Hoffman, executive editor at ILTV, and this week on ILTV Insider, I'm joined by Dr. Lior Sternfeld and Behnam Ben Taleblu to break it all down. Let's get started. Thank you both so much for being here.
Thank you.
So I want to get started by asking you this. Why do we think that Trump really left the G7 summit? Obviously, you know, there were rumors or reports that he had left because he wanted to deal with the issue between Israel and Iran. He indicated that might not have been the case. He says the U.S. is still not going to get involved in the war militarily, but many are speculating otherwise. Tell me, Lior, what do you think?
I think that Trump wants to be seen as involved and as some kind having influence over Israel and Iran during this war. I think that what he encounters now, maybe for the first time, is some kind of ideological opposition from within the GOP. We see the America First congressperson calling against intervention in the war very loudly and against what might be seen as the line that Trump leads. I think that the war created some problems for Trump that he did not foresee in the administration and in the GOP ranks, and I think that this is part of the reason that he had to leave in order to assess the options that he has from within Washington.
Now, piggybacking on that, Behnam, I want to turn to you. I mean, Trump has actually said from day one that he was in office that in general he doesn't want to get involved in other countries' wars. But at the same time, he's also made it very, very clear, including just last night in all capital letters, that absolutely Iran cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. So how do you read that tension? I mean, piggybacking on what he said, what will then be the next steps?
Well, it certainly means that there'll be a least common denominator approach for the president between more traditional things that we've seen from Republican foreign and security policy and from divisions within the Republican Party itself. I actually think there is more overlap than difference between those two positions that you mentioned that meets the eye. So the president could very much sincerely say that he's not looking to expand wars, but he can also very sincerely say that he's been giving the Islamic Republic of Iran a chance. I mean, look at how consistent the president has been in terms of his quest for a diplomatic resolution to the Iranian nuclear crisis, for example. This is something he's been saying since he campaigned for term one back in 2015, 2016. Saying that he, quote, buys bad deals and he tries to make them into good deals. There's no doubt he tried to pursue diplomacy congruent with max pressure in term one, and there's no doubt he hit the ground running talking about negotiating with Iran in term two.
Now, one of the please go ahead, Lior. Yeah.
If I can just say something, I think that what Trump is now trying to do is basically get into the same parameters of agreement that the JCPOA offered in 2018 and which the US left. I think that this is now trying to make up for lost territory, if my reading is correct.
You think that we would end up with the exact same terms as the JCPOA?
I think that right now there's no way to get the same terms of the JCPOA. It will be, in my opinion, it will have to be more favorable to Iran because we are no longer in 2015. and we cannot walk back, to baseline that is lower than what 2015 was. I think that 2015, the JCPOA was a good agreement that had problems for sure, but it was going to the direction that Iran would not have military capabilities in the coming 20 years. And once the U.S. left, Iran proceeded with the nuclear activity and nuclear research, and we are no longer in a position that we can dictate. Again, this is things may change after this war, but I don't think that we will get to the exact same agreement.
So let me stop you for a moment, because that one of the things, one of the things that you mentioned is that Iran has taken a jump. Yeah, Ben, I'm going to have you respond to him as well. But while you're responding, also tell me if you think in these weapons, Iran has a nuclear weapon, because there are some insinuating that perhaps they not only developed these ballistic missiles and some of these other capabilities, but in fact, potentially have already nuclear capabilities. So Behnam, go ahead.
Do I believe the Islamic Republic of Iran already has a nuclear weapon? No, I do not believe that. The Islamic Republic of Iran, to the best of my knowledge at least, is borderline a threshold nuclear state. It can weaponize quickly if it wanted to, but certainly no, I don't believe it has a nuclear weapon already. To the good doctor's point about the JCPOA, listen, there were concerns both in official and unofficial Washington that if the president would go to something back again like the 2015 nuclear deal, or perhaps even worse. But the string of commentary we've seen before the shooting started, perhaps in the past 6 to 8 weeks, from the Secretary of State, from the Secretary of Defense, from the press secretary, from the special envoy himself, Mr. Witkoff, and most importantly from the president, actually have all congealed in one direction, talking about red lines and deadlines that would be much better than the JCPOA. For instance, they all spoke about no enrichment in Iran, for example. That's not something that was an achievement of the JCPOA. The fact that the Islamic Republic still is enriching uranium to this day is one of the original sins of the JCPOA. So I think while there may have been concern based on some earlier commentary by some senior administration officials that if the U.S. was going to go back to something, it would be going back to something weaker or on par with the JCPOA. But now I think the stakes are sufficiently high, and the Trump administration has clearly charted a course here where there really would be a point of no return, and they would be, not just not kicking the can down the road, but it would be a political own goal and a strategic own goal if they did that.
Well, and while that makes sense, and Trump is certainly encouraging J.D. Vance and Witkoff to return to the negotiating table, though he has made statements saying that Iran will have to come toward America if it is wanting to have the ceasefire at this point, because Iran is obviously requesting that the attacks slow down, cease, and that there is some kind of ceasefire. But what would then be viable? Because it seems to me that we've already kind of opened the can of worms at this point. Israel has attacked quite a lot of the nuclear facilities, though not all, hopefully set Iran back in some way. So is there actually a viable diplomatic way to pull this war to a close at this stage, Lior?
I think I want to mention, because I think it's important, that overnight intelligence resources told CNN that based on their understanding and reading, Iran is nowhere near where they thought they would be in terms of enrichment and the capability of putting together a bomb. I think that sorry.
It's okay, go ahead and regroup, yeah.
Yeah, I think that in terms of going back to negotiation from now, we will have to. It cannot be the U.S. as the only superpower that oversees it. We will have to, and I say it with great distress. I think that it will have to include parties that will be considered as on the side of the Iranians, like China and Russia, because otherwise, an honest agreement that will be be sustainable cannot be one that brings Iran to its knees. I think that the success of of the Obama administration was that they viewed Iran as an equal partner, and this was what led to the breakthrough with the JCPOA. An attempt to bring Iran to its knees, I think, is doomed to fail from the get-go.
Well, on the other hand, we could go ahead and continue this war and potentially take out any nuclear program. You mentioned maybe they were further away. Some say they were closer than we think. It's quite hard to know still. But what we do know is that Israel has said it cannot take out the Fordo nuclear site, likely without U.S. assistance. We don't own the bunker-busting bombs or the B-2 bomber needed to deliver them. So does Israel need the U.S. then to even achieve its military goals in the war, or might there be another way to accomplish them? Behnam, why don't you take that?
Well, objectively, and if you're looking at munitions and platforms, yes, the Israelis would need the United States to collapse or break through the near 300 feet of concrete that separates the Fordo fuel enrichment plant from the surface of the earth. So if one is looking at the problem purely militarily, then yes. But what the Israelis have shown time and time again when it comes to counterproliferation in the region, intelligence operations in the region, and even being able to modify U.S. military capabilities that they buy and later on use in the region, is that there's plenty of room for surprise and there's plenty of room to doubt the conventional wisdom. And in a world where the Israelis may have or have achieved already basically air superiority over Western Iran, Western, if not large parts of central Iran as well, they may be able to kind of repetitively attempt to try to strike the same position where the previous bomb that they would have dropped, which is not a 30,000-pound bunker buster bomb, but maybe a 2,000-plus pound bunker buster, and try to have that tunnel deeper and deeper and deeper. Who knows if the Israelis would, divert some of the resources that they have in terms of human potential and have something like an SAS sort of raid against Fordo. These are all kind of out-of-the-box, imaginary type thinking. But again, I think that kind of out-of-the-box imaginary type thinking has been what has given the Israelis the upper hand qualitatively against quantitatively superior adversaries like Hezbollah or the Islamic Republic of Iran today. And then ultimately, I think the Israelis, I'm not sure, may be banking on this, but I think they know that if the Islamic Republic continues to escalate its missile war against the Israelis, then there may be a point in which the regime, as it tries to really land a blow against Israel, may internationalize the war and target the U.S. And at that point, I think the U.S. Would come in to defend itself and to defend its interests. And then the question would be, at what point, as the U.S. defends itself, would it also consider a counterproliferation mission against Fordo?
For sure. And I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned the creativity, and I'm sort of picturing this, beeper attack in Iran and how that could potentially bring down the Fordo nuclear site if there is some way that we could get inside or get that done. Now, I know that, it's possible, let's just say, right, that Israel does manage to destroy Iran's most important nuclear sites, and it has done some solid damage so far on at least some of the sites. What do you think is the risk then of the Iranian proxy groups or other terror cells, many of them very weak right now, sitting around Israel, but still launching some kind of global revenge attacks? And as you mentioned, including potentially in the United States, how high of a percentage likelihood is that at this stage? Lior, do you agree with Behnam? Yes or no?
I don't know if Iran's proxies can launch an attack that would be profoundly different from what we've seen so far. I think that the Houthis have been pretty consistent in shooting rockets at Israel in the past 20 months, and we've seen. I mean, it's nothing to be dismissive of, but it's nothing that I don't think that they can present a new capability that we haven't seen. Hezbollah right now is busy with problems within Lebanon and rebuilding efforts. Maybe I don't know if there's another rabbit to pull out of this hat. I think that. I don't see right now, but I may be completely wrong. I don't see an Iranian attempt to hit the U.S. directly. I think that this will be the excuse that many in the U.S. need in order to be drawn into the war. And we should say that if President Trump wanted to, the war could could have ended today, yesterday, 3 days ago, because Israel really cannot operate without the U.S. consent and without U.S. supply.
100%. Now, we do see that Iran is sending some very strong ballistic missiles into Israel. We've had more than, about 24 people killed already in the attacks, and obviously hundreds who have been wounded, some of them quite critically. How are these rockets different from the rockets that we typically see, the ones launched by Hezbollah or Hamas? And how many do we estimate Iran still has in its reserve? Like, what more do we potentially have coming, Behnam?
Sure. So even before this began, and even after the Israelis have been engaging in both successful interceptions, some with the help of the Americans, as well as on Iranian soil, militarily what are called left-of-launch operations, or military operations that go after the Iranian missiles before they are fired. Even with all of that massive caveat, the Islamic Republic of Iran is home to the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the Middle East. Mostly, but not exclusively, of what existed between the 150,000 to 200,000 strong rocket, mortar, missile, drone arsenal of Hezbollah were rockets. And the difference between rockets and missiles, particularly ballistic missiles, is that rockets are unguided and ballistic missiles are guided. They both have a parabolic trajectory. The ballistic missiles that Iran is firing at Israel today, however, have much heavier warheads and have much faster, flight times. So in this instance, the distance between Iran and Israel is about 1,400 kilometers, give or take. Some of these projectiles fly about 12 minutes plus from Iran to Israel, and they can carry, 450, 500 kilogram minimum worth of explosive material, all the way up to 2 tons. We saw, I think, just yesterday or a day and a half ago in this very open Israel-Iran war, a ballistic missile actually penetrated a shelter, and I think 3 or 4 Israeli civilians taking cover in that shelter were actually killed, if not mortally wounded, by this penetrative ballistic missile strike. And the Islamic Republic's volleys are dropping of ballistic missiles, meaning it's firing first 100, then 50, then 20, then 30. So the numbers are incrementally going down. That's largely believed to be part of the Iranian calculation to conserve more, because the Israeli operation against both what's left of their arsenal as well as the launchers for their arsenal continues to be successful on Iranian territory. You can call it basically a defanging operation. But make no mistake, these projectiles are qualitatively different from rockets. These are weapons of war, and these are weapons poorly managed for escalation management. These are weapons that you use to take out large compounds and blocks and military targets. And the Islamic Republic is firing them at densely populated civilian centers like Ramat Gan or Tel Aviv or Haifa, or any of the images that we see on social media coming out of these projectiles going through Israel's layered air and missile defenses, admittedly a much smaller number, perhaps in the 6 to 10%, if you're giving a very, 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 very liberal estimate, perhaps maybe 30 of the 380 that the Iranians have fired thus far. But this is a back of the envelope calculation.
Right, and of course, it's very important what you just said, which is the idea, there has been some speculation that the numbers of rockets, since they had gone down, 200 and 100, and then only 10 last night, another 20 or so this morning, that maybe Iran was running out. But as you pointed out, no, they're conserving, and they're thinking about when do they want to use those rockets. Now, we are seeing images of Iranians fleeing Tehran, and we're hearing rumors of quite a bit of internal unrest. Trump has even called on the Iranian people to rise up. Is this war actually threatening the regime from within? Do we believe that the Islamic Republic could actually fall? Please keep your answer to 1 minute, Lior. Go ahead.
I think that there is a lot of concern in Iran. To be short, I think that the war right now, more than encouraging people to rise up against the government, I think that it makes more people to support the regime right now against the war against Israel. We've seen it before, that every time that Iran is being attacked from outside, people who are opposition activists, people who've been in jail for their political activism, speak in support of defending the country. I don't see right now any viable political opposition that can organize, mobilize the people to a meaningful regime change in Iran, and I don't think that a regime change is a positive outcome if it comes from the outside. I think that this is something that should organically build up in Iran.
Okay, and Behnam, in 30 seconds, do you agree with Lior on this?
Broadly disagree. I would say this, there's no doubt that there may be a foreign element to regime change if the military operations continue, but there's a difference between foreign and foreign imposed. The Iranian people have been trying to change their own regime for decades now. They've been brutally slaughtered. They've had the injustice system thrown at them. They've had the apparatus of repression basically thrown at protesting innocent Iranians. My heart goes out to all Iranians right now, particularly when you see these images coming out of Iran, not just from the capital, but mostly from the capital, that shows them being unable to flee. The big difference with Israel is that Israel has a government that cares about life, cares about the well-being of its own citizens, has shelters. The Islamic Republic has 0 shelters for civilians in a place as big as Tehran, with a population
100%.
of about 11 million. You sadly have people just sitting in their apartments, awaiting a horrible fate, which is really a deplorable situation and yet another indictment of the Islamic Republic.
100%. So unfortunately, I do have to cut you off because that is all of the time that we have this evening. I want to say thank you to both of our guests for being here. Thank you, Lior, and thank you, Behnam. For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at ILTV.tv. Thanks for watching Insider. Let's win this war and find a path to peace in the Middle East.